Let me ask you all a question. Got to be honest. Yes. Have you all ever engaged yourself in a task and you were so into it, so obsessed with it, so detailed into it, that you've often overlooked something even more important? Anybody ever find themselves in that situation?
I would say yes.
Oh, let me tell you a story. This is a true story, by the way. It's not like some of them I kind of... My Uncle Harley, my Uncle Bill, went hunting, as they always did. They go out in the winter and in the fall, and they go up to the North Carolinas and South Carolinas, and they had a little cabin up there. And they would go up there, and Bob, my father, as they called him, Mr. Chandler, Robert Chandler, he wasn't available. So they took their youngest brother, Howard, with them. And they all went up there. Now, Howard wasn't much of a hunter, wasn't much of a marksman or a gun guy. But he went with them. He says, yeah, we'll give it a try. Well, they went up there 4 days later, walking through the woods, tromping, everything they could. Got nothing. They hadn't even shot a rabbit. So they're waiting. So the last day there, they go, well, we got to get back. Bill had to go back to work. Harley had to go back to work. Their ladies at home get furious when those guys go off and don't come back. So they had to get back. On the last day they're out there, they went deep into the woods, deep into the woods, and boy, Harley got a bead on a buck, a big old buck. Nailed him. Dropped him in one shot. Well, Harley and Bill were so excited about this. See, they don't just shoot for game, they shoot to eat. That'll pack their freezer for the whole winter. So they ran and got that deer, and they dragged it back hundreds of pounds. They dragged it back, threw it in the back of his truck, threw all the guns and stuff in there, and got in the truck, took off, drove all the way from wherever they were all the way back to Holly Hill. That's where they lived, over here in Holly Hill, to the ranch. And they went in, they were bragging about it, showing everybody, and they dressed the deer, and they were cutting up the meat and everything and dividing it. And they go, where's Howard? Get Howard in here. Uh-oh. They forgot their little brother in the woods. 8 hours, 10 hours away. So he goes, uh-oh. So one of us got to go back to get him. And Harley said, I didn't leave him there. Bill said, I didn't leave him there. He said, we left him there. We better go back and get him. He's going to be upset. Long story short, they pretty much wrapped up what they were doing, got back in the truck, and both of them went after him. And when they got there, he had already walked about 50 miles down the interstate. And they drove right past him and said, that looked like Howard. And turn around and go back and get him. And boy, if Howard had any ammunition in that gun, he'd have got a kill too. And I've never seen Howard angry before, but that young man, he was the youngest. 12 children. My mother was the youngest girl. Howard was the youngest boy. They were number 11 and 12. And he was furious. He says, yeah, but we're all excited about the deer. He says, you left me in the woods. He couldn't even find his way back to the cabin, didn't know where it was. This is his first hunting trip ever. Well, you know what? Sometimes as the old expression say, we can't see the forest for the trees. We get so focused on one tree, one point, one thing, that everything else becomes oblivious, even though everything else is often more important than what we're looking at. Women are masters of this, especially when it comes to finding fault with their men. I'm just teasing. Anyway, this morning, Jesus had the same problem with his boys. They came into the city of Capernaum, kind of a hangout where they always were. That's where the whole Sermon by the Sea and all that stuff happened. And they were resting, and they gathered themselves around a table, and Jesus noticed they were uncannily quiet. So he said, hey boys, tell me something. What were you guys arguing about on the way up here? Of course, they're all sitting there like the kid that did it. Ever taught school? All right, who did this? Nobody did it. And Jesus says, I know what you were talking about. If any of you would truly want to be the best, the greatest at what you do, then you need to step back, put yourself last in line, become the servant of everybody, and see the forest and not the tree. Take your eyes off yourself. See the rest of the forest, and maybe your tree won't look as big as you think it is. We're going to talk about that today. Sometimes we pay more attention to the minuscule that we can't see the whole for the single little part we're obsessed with. First, I want you to stand up. We're going to sing a song.